Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back on another video from Talking on Mark, continuing with his Bleach reviews, part 5, the second part of the Arrancar arc. This is so sick. He's asking, is it good? It's freaking amazing. He hasn't even got up to the Vasto Lorde transformation yet, and then Ichigo just absolutely wailing on Ukiura, and we've got all the Aizen transformations, we've got... Oh, let's get into it. I'm excited. This bit's so good. And I totally forgot about the Fullbringer arc, so he's still... So he's still going to be carrying on. Like,
you know what? I'm proud of you guys. Last week's feature-length video had some
it was a long one.
Criticism, but you guys were cool with all of it. This is great. Will this week be the same? What did I think about it? Well, I'm not going to give it away.
This is so sick.
With this material,
There's some bloody good fights in this.
Words of High School Musical 2. The answer is I don't fucking know, because something really weird happens immediately following last week's material, where the chapters I thought we were going to get were going to take us to the finale. Instead, take us 110 years into the past.
Oh yeah, where we find out. Oh wait, I forgot about this.
Yeah. We get some juicy, substantial flashbacks to sink our teeth into.
Well, the visors and how Aizen experimented on them and that.
My review of Bleach's short, turn back the pendulum flashback, and everything that comes after.
I forgot about this. Yeah, Aizen experimented on the visors, didn't he?
So, in the last section I mentioned how Urahara was a bit of an enigma to me, particularly after it was revealed that he and Mr. Kurosaki had some sort of shared history and understanding.
Yeah, so sick.
During that introductory portion, we were also introduced to another group called the Vizards, with predominant characters like Shinji and Hiyori, to name but a few. Prior to all of this, we had only been aware of two sides, the good and, well, the evil. Or at least that's how it's depicted so far. The side of Ichigo and his allies versus the mysterious Aizen and his lackeys as they try to overthrow the current world. The addition of these two other factions with the Vizards and Mr. Kisuke's group offer other points of view by which we can try to make sense of the world this story is taking place within, and hopefully, I hope, add nuance to the ending here. That just because Bleach is depicted artistically as black and white, it does its best work when operating within the grey areas of human nature. It's precisely why Ichigo's inner conflict
Let's go.
It's precisely why Aizen went undetected, allowed to plot and scheme for decades and decades. And so, because this is where my head is at and where I pray the story goes,
it's not even his Bankai, is it? It's just his,
when I discovered that this flashback offered not only a history of Kisuke or Urahara, but also a history of Shinji, Hiyori, and many other folks that now call themselves Vizards.
Vizards, yeah. This is the curious verbiage that leads 110 years ago.
Part of the story since its inception. Over 300 chapters deep and well over halfway into the current arc, we are hurled 100 years.
It actually is interesting that they did this just before the Vasto Lorde reveal, isn't it? I like that, it's cool.
The way we understand them today. This was very strange to see, to say the least. The majority of this series has been told through a rather consistent point of view. Normally Ichigo, and without him in the story, it still managed to feel like Bleach, and oftentimes that can be quite difficult to pull off. Instead of Ichigo, this section largely focuses on the origins, morality, and history surrounding Kisuke Urahara as he gets promoted from a warden of a rather dubious preemptive prison for potentially dangerous souls to a captain of 12.
Yeah, he was a captain, yeah.
To appreciate quality to this flashback that none of the past parts of the story have offered us, purely by virtue of what it is. It allows us this abstract chance to see established characters as we've never seen them before. From Miss Yoruichi as the captain of Second Company, and a very young Byakuya prior to his
yeah, it's cool to see them young and like before they are what they are now.
However, that simply tickles a romantic and nostalgic part of my brain, and so I figured it was a distraction to what could be communicated during this flashback. Amidst a sea of distractions, you could easily be fooled. And this is a philosophy or approach many authors take when trying to pull the wool over their readers' eyes.
Definitely.
When it comes to flashbacks that feature and put focus on a large number of characters, I normally ask myself, what makes this specific date that we flash back into so significant?
Yeah, why is it important that we're seeing this?
After this? And when you ask yourself that question, you find yourself asking a very useful and more focused second question. What happens on this day that can't happen on any other day? The answer to that might be obvious. It's the day Urahara accepts his promotion as the captain. However, it's also the integration of another prominent, albeit as of yet underused character, Gin, or Jin, or whatever.
Oh mate, we needed this for Gin as well, for what happens later.
One that we're obviously familiar with from Soul Society. This is also his first day working beneath another Aizen, as he starts to build his empire around him. These are the two stories that are intertwined in some way, and so for me, the mystery presented in this tale wasn't so much who was responsible for the sudden disappearance of certain civilians and Soul Reapers later on, though that was creepy, but instead it is how these two plot threads between Urahara and Aizen were connected. So
how does it
explore that
now.
This is advice that Shinji offers Urahara following his first day on the job. It's evident that Kisuke isn't a natural-born leader, and
let me see what Aizen thinks of like
it's cool to see
Shinji
participate
ability when he's trying to fight Aizen, and Aizen figuring it out. Oh, so many cool moments.
There's a portion of this flashback that takes part in a prison that's honestly an interesting ruffle to this short story that concerns the motivations of Urahara, particularly when it comes to his work, at least his past work. Known as the Maggot Nest, before becoming a captain, Urahara was a warden in a prison facility built to contain potentially dangerous individuals before they committed crimes. The pool of folks that would be put into this would be chosen from the 13 companies of the Soul Society if the opportunity presented itself. That on its own is crazy. However, one of the folks held there was Kuratsuchi, making the current situation all the more crazy seeing as we know where he ends up today. Approaching Kuratsuchi in the depths of a cell designed to detain him, Urahara expresses that he wants to start a research and development organization within 12th Company and wants Kuratsuchi to be assistant director, with his final offer basically making him a de facto leader if he, Urahara, was to ever die or leave. This occurs around the same time Aizen asks Jin or Gin to take out a third seed and thus sets the stage for the second half of this flashback. 9 years later. It's here that Aizen decides to bring to the attention of the class that quite a few of Rukongai's residents have disappeared in the last month. The 9th Company investigates, and once they're discovered, bushes filled with garments of 10 Soul Reapers after saving a young kid called Shuhei. The fact that this little kid is asked his specific name means, I assume, he'll be a significant character once this flashback concludes, because in this he really doesn't matter, so I wonder why he would even give us that exposition. Meanwhile, Urahara is continuing his work with guys that might be able to aid this very problem, but sends Hiyori, his second in command, to scope out the area instead. While en route, 9th Company gets obliterated, thus alerting all back at base to what just occurred. In response to this, Urahara asks for permission to aid her, but is denied. Naturally, he protests as
of course. Excuse me, what?
But that's when Yoroichi chimes in. She tells Urahara to cool down and to not dishonor Hiyori by losing faith in her abilities. And to that I say, you do know another company captain seems to have been killed.
Yeah, that's like
whatever
a big
about
deal.
not talking back to superiors and maintaining cohesion in a tight spot. This feelings-based excuse presented by Yoroichi feels like a big cope if ever I did hear one. But anyway, enough preamble. Hiyori is saved by Shinji at the last moment. So, around now, I'd like to talk about how this arc ties into the themes of the greater Arrancar arc, and it's actually integrated in a way I didn't notice or anticipate. Making its reveal by Aizen all the more satisfying as a reader, recontextualizing a lot of what I thought came before in the process. It's about trust, and all the trappings that come with it. The good, the virtuous, and the bad. Something I didn't mention towards the beginning of this video was that there was a third significant event that took place that day 110 years ago alongside Jin's graduation and Urahara's promotion. It too involved these characters, however, there was a third member, a third participant, a third person that facilitated the ending and overall message of this arc. And that person is Shinji. The mystery or surprise element delivered for this flashback for me was never the reveal that Aizen was behind it all and managed to manipulate the others such that he would get away with it. We always knew that he would because he ultimately does.
We are currently at that point where he has got away with it.
If he's not trying to surprise us with Aizen's reveal as the man behind all of this, then what? Well, it's actually more abstract than that. It's how trust can be interpreted, offering up the driving philosophical footnote that crafted the perfect environment for this event to take place, one that destroyed Shinji, enabled Aizen, and led to Urahara's banishment. Trust is a phrase thrown around a number of times in this short flashback. Kyoraku suggests to Urahara that he ought to trust and have more patience in such an example. However, this is the arc that illuminated for us the exact drawback to not showing trust. And Aizen explains exactly why to his former captain, Shinji, as he lay there before him. He says, "Because you didn't trust me, you maintained a certain distance from me. You never opened yourself up. You never tried to get to know me. This is why you never saw the truth, even when I replaced myself with a complete stranger." That is a really interesting direction to take this theme in, and not one I honestly saw coming. One that ties not only Ichigo's current struggle into the picture with Shinji and Urahara, but one that unilaterally ties Aizen's very existence into that theme's framework. He's the result of this lack of trust. Shinji said he chose to keep Aizen close in order to keep an eye on him, but in reality, Aizen could have chosen to deny that very promotion to become an assistant, similar to how others have done so in the past or earlier in the story. So, in a sense, Aizen was the one in control. He chose Shinji because he offered him the perfect opportunity to succeed. The emotional distance Shinji put up against Aizen, acting as the perfect environment for him to curate his plan behind the scenes. It's an outstanding narrative twist that even alluded to earlier in the arc with Shinji's very advice he gave to Urahara.
So much foreshadowing, man.
Trust isn't so straightforward in this world. It has consequences and it opens you up to being hurt. However, in the same way that Hiyori mentioned to Urahara that the philosophy surrounding his former prison was crazy, that the facility too worked on a no-tolerance policy when it came to the prisoners who hadn't yet committed crimes, there was no trust there. Removing trust can for sure be there for a reason. Perhaps you are hurt, perhaps you wish to protect society, or perhaps you want to shoulder all the work for yourself. But at the end of the day, this short flashback highlights through Aizen's rise and success that there exist benefits to altruistic trust that
also trusting, Now,
there's
benefits to trusting people.
I was a little disappointed, but just FYI, it's because of a giant baby and because I thought I knew something that was going to happen, but didn't actually end up happening. Okay, so Shinji and the others just start hollifying, right?
Yeah.
That's great. It's at this moment Urahara interrupts and saves the day, before Aizen says something cryptic about Urahara being the man that he thought he was and then leaves. Now, I knew Urahara was going to make the save eventually. He did leave to do just that, but I thought Hiyori was going to be one of the only ones to make the save as a hollified masked warrior. I remembered back towards her introduction, we were told that she was one of the fastest to adapt to that form, so I thought this high-stakes situation would have been an incredible place for it to occur, and for that to then
that would have been cool,
save, but oh well, I guess this is fine. Following this, the status quo shifts to something much more familiar to us. We learned that Urahara created the Hogyoku, he's exiled, Shinji and his allies end up in their own situation, and Yoroichi sacrifices her standing within the Soul Society for what she thinks is the right thing to do, which is a nice change from where she stood pertaining to
before, Jesus Christ.
With the final note that this flashback ends on being from Shinji as he feels as though he owes Urahara and Aizen for what he has become. There's a nuance to this story that's emerging, one that's no longer a two-sided affair, but one being approached from multiple angles. And overall, I really enjoyed this short flashback.
Let's
freaking go. Time to dig into the real meat and potatoes of this arc, the part we've been building up to for the last 150 chapters. So, what were my general thoughts? Well, they are neither entirely positive or entirely negative. There are aspects of this finale I thought were really well delivered, and honestly, brilliantly delivered. I thought the story being told was fascinating, and I thought the artwork above all else was consistently fun to read, though that's nothing new with Kubo. Before I specify what parts I loved and what specifically I saw as a slipping quality, I'd like for us to appreciate that I've taken the time over my career to criticize long stories like One Piece, Naruto, and Dragon Ball. All these stories, like Bleach, are not perfect. And I think there are serious problems with this arc that I personally think, had they been rectified, I would consider this the strongest arc overall.
Interesting.
However, I think it might have fallen short of that. Though I'm still not entirely certain, I'm collecting my thoughts on this, so let's explore a little more and I'll give you my
get into it, come on, let's go.
So, what are my thoughts on the beginning of this final section?
Hype. Lots and lots of hype.
The plot is fractured between two scenarios or points of view. The main crew of Ichigo, Orihime, Uryu, and Rukia in the world of Hueco Mundo, and of course the now new scene of fake Karakura Town, defended by the Soul Society's best, from the tyrannical and now terrifyingly powerful Aizen. Both of these sections have their ups and their downsides, and overall, I think both came out delivering more good than bad. Let's start off by covering some of Fate Karakura's opening and draw attention to, by far, my single biggest issue with this story.
Okay,
and
go.
yes,
Oh.
I think it hurts the story in a substantial and significant manner. However, I'm only going to point out this once. In pointing out this issue with Bleach, I am not simultaneously putting Dragon Ball, Naruto, and One Piece on their own pedestals above it. I have dedicated large sections of my past reviews to criticizing what I consider to be very substantial pacing issues in One Piece, as well as criticize its layout work in the
like the placement with the dialogue and all that stuff all over the panels.
Dragon Ball's Buu saga and with the series writing in general. I mean, it is true that Dragon Balls do take away a lot of the stakes in that very series.
Yes.
Does that mean I don't love each of those stories? Absolutely not. Every series has their own unique issues, and while Bleach, I believe, has issues here, it's better, I think, than other series in other areas. So, what specifically is the issue I have with Bleach? There are too many fights that stop the progression of the story in its tracks.
What?
And this is an issue because I genuinely really enjoy the story of the Arrancar.
Mate, I thought,
to me, it
like,
feels like Kubo consistently
I thought it was sick that there was so many fights going on.
I had the best faith argument I could muster for this very argument. Over the last few weeks, I've taken the time to speak to a few friends of mine who really and truly love the Bleach series to help process my thoughts, to sharpen my criticisms in a precise manner, and to learn what people who do like this section specifically love about
The
it.
fights.
And what they love are the characters. They love spending time in this world and with these individuals. And this is the case whether they be secondary, tertiary, or background players, because they love learning more about this world and the history of the individuals that populate these pages. And let me tell you, I have no issue with that answer. It's a really good answer, one I personally agree with too. I've even said as much myself that character writing is Kubo's strongest trait as a writer. That scene where Orihime says goodbye
Yeah, that was class. That was really cool. Yeah.
is genuinely heartbreaking in the most brilliant of ways. However, I think there's a distinction to make here, an important one. And that is, world building in storytelling is very important. It helps the world feel alive, but it is
One Piece does it very, very well.
Than the plot. World building serves the story, and if it gets in the way of it, that's where I personally start to have problems.
Okay.
Bleach as a manga is a shonen story. And shonen is a genre that uses fighting to propel the plot forward. Oh, by the way, I'm going to say shonen a lot in this next section.
Okay.
When I say it, I want you to know that I mean battle shonen. Specifically shonen that focuses and tells a story through battle. So,
yes.
Whenever I say
Like
shonen, I mean battle shonen. Okay, cool. Bye.
Go.
Similarly to how mysteries use the enigma of the plot to guide our curiosity, or how romance uses interpersonal relationships and emotional conversation to walk us through their stories, shonen, in turn, uses fights for that very purpose. And this is honestly out of necessity. So much time in a shonen is spent fighting, it of course needs to utilize this time to push the plot forward. To help illustrate what exactly I'm getting at, I have two great examples of fights propelling the plot forward.
Okay.
The first one is Raditz versus Goku and Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z's Saiyan Saga. Despite the specific issues Dragon Ball has, when it comes to fights propelling the story forward, Akira Toriyama's approach is phenomenal, and it makes for a very snappy story as a result.
It's great openings for Z. It is fantastic.
It's crucial to understanding the story moving forward. Without this fight, the arc just can't work, simply because it serves a ton of narrative.
Oh, we learned so much from this event happening.
Acts as an important piece of development for Piccolo that facilitates his section of the arc with Gohan in its entirety. It kills Goku, setting him on his journey to Otherworld, and it establishes what the goal of the arc is: to stop the incoming Saiyans that we also learn in this very fight are stronger than Raditz.
What we've already faced, yeah, it's like, wow.
And due to it carrying all of this narrative weight, I genuinely think it's an almost perfect example of a shonen fight propelling the plot forward. And even if you want me to go through the smaller fights in the arc, like those that occur with the likes of Nappa once they arrive, a ton of that is used to establish who these villains are, which becomes important very soon after. And perhaps the most important aspect of this arc as well, we're exposed to how far Gohan still has to go mentally before he can truly help his team. And as we see later, this aspect, this exposition for him in the story became vital for us to both understand and appreciate what he offers to the climax.
Very much so.
For without him, things would have turned out very differently for Goku. And that's just one dimension of this fight. Bleach, however, seems to do the opposite of this when characters other than Ichigo are taking part in a fight. Where it would be impossible for the Saiyan Saga to make sense without Raditz's fight, there are dozens of fights in this arc, and that's being generous, where it feels like if I removed them, all that would be lost would be the personality and history of the secondary and background characters.
These fights aren't really necessary to keep the plot moving forwards.
On the story of this
I will give him that.
It should. And while, yes, that does build up the world around it, it doesn't do anything for the story, which makes it by default filler, flavor. And canon filler is never a good thing. But what am I suggesting as an alternative?
Yeah, what are you suggesting as an alternative?
These fights? Not necessarily. What I am asking for is, if you are going to spend time with all of these wonderful characters, make it necessary to the story instead of getting in the way. Now, my second example of a fight that propels the plot forward also manages to splice in the personalities of the characters we all know and love while making that a pivotal part of
Oh
the
my
narrative.
god.
And that fight
Usopp
happens to be
versus...
my favorite fight from One Piece.
versus Luffy.
Luffy versus Usopp.
Yeah, that was
of the Order
something
System.
else. That was something
I
else.
used the Dragon Ball example to explain how one can use fights to drive a narrative, so let's use One Piece to demonstrate how you can exposit the mental state of characters through fighting, and how those very exposited personalities can create the fuel that pushes the story in a specific direction. And funnily enough, it's for that very reason this is my favorite fight in all of One Piece.
Damn.
On the surface, this isn't a fight that's carried by the weight of the physical task standing in front of Luffy, but instead the emotional baggage it represents. The main plot thread most people recall from this section of the story concerns that of Robin and her now famous declaration. However, the story that Usopp represents complements that main plot thread perfectly. Faced with the deteriorating condition of the Going Merry and the decision Luffy and the others have made to move onto another ship better prepared for the rougher seas that they now have to face, he equates this to his own sense of inferiority. How he doesn't feel like he can be a valuable member to the crew. How if they can replace the Going Merry, they must too be capable of
replacing him. Yeah.
This is where Usopp's motivation comes from. On the opposite side of the coin, Luffy is forced to deal with his first big foray into what it means to be a leader, and as a captain, he has to make a very tough decision. He isn't happy about replacing Merry, but if she was to be used into the future, it would be a danger to the crew he's now responsible for. This is a non-negotiable point for either side, and what spawns from it is one of the most emotional...
It's very emotional, my god, so emotionally fueled.
Not because the foe is mighty or some strange monster, but because the foe is precisely the opposite. In the conversation that takes place prior, you can hear the subtext of every word. The insecurity of Usopp, the indecisiveness and fear in Luffy, the strength Zoro gives his captain as his number 2. You can even feel it in the words Nami pleads to both of them, with this argument threatening the very thing she's always wanted, a family. It's an utterly incredible piece of character writing, climaxing in a fashion unlike anything we've yet seen in the series, with the Straw Hats fractured in a serious and now personal way, causing a butterfly effect that creates the specific mood and circumstances the arc contends with moving forward. It births Usopp's impromptu alter ego Sniper King and the position of the vital pieces that outline and define the arc as a whole. Luffy's struggle against Usopp is emphasized when looked at alongside the lengths he's willing to go to for another in Robin. It emphasizes how difficult that conflict with Usopp must have been for him, and how happy he stands to be once he returns. And so, if you take anything away from this video and this argument, I want it to be that world building within a fight is more than possible, while also propelling the story forward. Whether it be like Dragon Ball's able to
I get you.
The armor of the Saiyans, the Scouters, spaceship and technology, etc. Not to mention Otherworld, which establishes so much en route to King Kai that will be used from that point onward, or whether it be the state of various personalities all at once like One Piece demonstrated. Neither One Piece or Dragon Ball are perfect, but I hope these examples highlight a specific issue this arc of Bleach has.
Dude,
I've read
yes,
through all of
it
those other
does.
stories, and I have never seen this specific problem so massively prominent in them. Knowing the good guy will win isn't the issue, it's how the fight plays out in the same predictable ways while offering nothing new to the story outside of their own self-contained segments and personalities. And knowing that, it hurts because this arc has so many upsides that I will most definitely discuss for the rest of this video, but had this arc been made more focused and refined with a shorter page count, I think it could have easily stood to be one of the strongest arcs in the Big Three, and certainly the best arc of Bleach. As it stands, the Arrancar arc of Bleach is a staggering 247 chapters long. And out of interest, how far do you guys think that would get you into Dragon Ball Z from its beginning with Raditz? The Ginyu Force? Maybe the Frieza fight. It is a long arc. Well, if you had guessed that, you'd have been wrong. 247 chapters into Dragon Ball Z will plant you squarely into its final arc of the story.
Oh, wow.
Towards the end of the World Tournament at that in the
Jesus.
book. And with all of that said, I am not suggesting that no one can like this material. I am not suggesting someone would be wrong for liking this material. All I am suggesting is that if these characters are worthy of our respect, then they shouldn't be pigeonholed into a section of the story contributing little to nothing to the progression of the narrative. They should be important. It should be the case that these are meaningful fights that change the course of the story. But instead, they just feel like they exist solely to create obligatory fights to show off the 10 big strong Arrancars, of which there didn't need to be so many to overcome in this story. In this opening section, we have characters like Ikaku, which I enjoy, but
I like all these fights, man.
Substantial, he contributed beyond fighting an enemy that doesn't matter. Then we have Shuhei, remember him? Shuhei, you know, the kid from the flashback?
Yeah.
Yep, he's there too. And then we have the pretty eyelash guy whose name I honestly have no idea of. And finally, we have Izuru. I've never seen this guy before, and if you told me that this was the first time I've seen him, I would have believed you, but I get the feeling that I should know who this person is. For the reasons I mentioned over the last 10 minutes of the video, I won't be covering their fights. Again, not necessarily because I didn't enjoy them, or at least parts of them, and some of their callbacks to prior events, but because I am here to review the story. As I said,
And you feel like the fights don't do anything narratively. Yeah.
For what feels like 20 plus chapters. And even when it comes to the bigger contenders like the captains and commander against the stronger Arrancars, it all just feels like it exists only to kill time in the plotline until Ichigo is done with his plotline in Wakamundo with Ulquiorra, which I will absolutely be getting to in just a second,
Please.
by the way.
Please.
What can I say about this section with the captains and the commander fighting? Well, the artwork in this section looks brilliant. Hinamori arriving on the scene is something I honestly didn't expect, and offers up one of the segments that serves the story in conveying just how monstrous
Aizen is a monster, man. He really
it's
is.
consistent with my criticism of the story, that 9 times out of 10, the story only progresses when Ichigo is on the screen, and during that particular moment with Hinamori, he is. But that's not to say there aren't good parts that don't involve him either. General Yamamoto stepping in once things start to turn south is, if nothing else,
things start to heat up there.
We don't know much of anything about his character other than that he is the best, so seeing the stronger Arrancars and eventually Aizen match up against this guy can be quite compelling in a spectacle sort of way. The feeble old man against the hulking monster makes for a strong contrast, but with equally but opposedly strong contrast and strength, making for a satisfying visual finish, much the same way Goku and Krillin offered up in early Dragon Ball, and heck, even in later Dragon Ball with the likes of Gohan and even Goku when facing Nappa. The smaller, more honorable fighter versus the brutish enemy is a tale as old as time. It's David versus Goliath story that always works. Similarly, one chapter later, he enjoys the benefit of being the one in a 1v3 affair. Again, putting him in what appears to be an unfavorable situation, only to subvert it. Again, used in countless other shonen to great effect. But yeah, after 20 or more chapters of what feels like the story on pause for the majority of the time, we eventually get back to Ichigo and Orihime, and most importantly, back to Bleach delivering what it's truly capable of. Ichigo versus Ulquiorra. I'm going to say it now, as an individual fight, of which there are many in this arc, I mean, there might even be more fights in this arc alone than all of Dragon Ball Z, but out of all of those fights in this arc, Ulquiorra versus Ichigo was my favorite. Yeah. There are stretches later where I thought the story really got going and hit new highs, but when it comes to 1v1 fights that take place in this arc, none, in my opinion, come close to touching this one. It is outstanding, and probably the best fight in the series, at least that I've seen so far. Firstly, let me say, I'm a big fan of the way Ichigo versus Ulquiorra looks. The black versus white aesthetic really suits the battle. It helps both fighters pop and honestly helps the contest look more straightforward to read through. And as a fight, it's much more nuanced and interesting. It's not as simple as the other fights have been because it's directly connected to the plot in a meaningful way. There's been a concerted effort across this arc to deliberately make us question more and more about Ulquiorra. What his morals are, how conflicted he might be, and as Ichigo curiously points out after being told he's becoming more hollow, he says to Ulquiorra that he's becoming more human. He's shown a much more considerate side than others in this story, and if nothing else, is alongside Grimjow, the most interesting antagonist introduced in this arc. Something this fight and the rest of the arc loves to enjoy is the awesomeness of a certain moment. It loves to bathe in the moonlight of a line someone delivers, a pose someone assumes, and the transformation that naturally follows. Standing in the way of Ichigo's saving Orihime, Ulquiorra is positioned and don't lose your way. Uryu, he pops in at the last moment to make the save. This is epic, and honestly, I went nuts when I was reading it because I was thinking at the time, damn, Uryu, Chad, Rukia, they haven't added much to this story, and I kind of wish they would. And when he did, I felt so much better about his character at the very least, setting up the perfect circumstances for Ichigo's transformation into his hollow form in the manga, which, given that Kubo is the man behind the pen, it is stunningly depicted.
That does look amazing.
This is the moment that starts Ichigo down a road where we haven't yet seen him venture. Battered left and right, the gap in power between the two is clear and obvious, and to add insult to injury, Ulquiorra has a second transformation. At any point, it feels like he has the ability to kill Ichigo to end it here and now, but he isn't. Instead, he seems to be more interested in learning why Ichigo is fighting, and to which he responds, I'm not fighting because I think I can win, I'm fighting because I have to. Orihime is brought to the top by Uryu. She sees Ulquiorra put a hole in Ichigo. Uryu holds off Ulquiorra. Orihime kneels over him, crying, and that's when it happens. The situation is dire. Stakes are high. This is what I'm talking about. She screams for Ichigo to help her, and oh shit! Ichigo could hear her, and in an effort to protect her, this is his response. The beast is unleashed. He slashes off Ulquiorra's arm with a Ceroblast. It's an awesome affair. I love the dynamic of this fight, and it feels as though at times it shares the same appeal of something like the Frieza fight did for me in Dragon, where the hero character was being totally outclassed by a massive magnitude,
and then we're back in the game.
A power that was unlike anything that came before, like an inner demon of some description. What he had been reluctant to engage with has suddenly and powerfully been released. And in the same fashion that Frieza came to realize that discrepancy between he and Goku, so too does the significantly more matter-of-fact and nuanced
Ulquiorra becomes a hell of a lot more serious in the fight, isn't it?
Obliterates him, outclassing him in practically every conceivable metric known to combat.
Oh, hollow-like.
This is how you weave the fight into your narrative. This is it. The story of Bleach concerns these characters and the respective journeys they've been on. The flow, the twists, the turns, the harrowing circumstances, and the ramifications of every single decision speaks volumes about who these characters are, where their values lie, and where they will eventually end up. It's wonderful, and a nice visual touch I noticed while in this form has to be the design of it.
It's so good.
The blacked out eyes of the previous form have now entirely vanished. All that remains are these dark holes in the husk of a skull, almost as if to emphasize how hollow it is. Unlike the power-ups that were very much enhancements to Ichigo's current design, alterations to a mask, and some palette swaps, this very much feels like something entirely different to Ichigo and the character, with no discernible familiar characteristics obvious for us to see. The veneer is porcelain white, the hair no longer short and spiky, but instead long. flowing and straight. Ruthless in nature, with no humanity left behind the actions it takes. The difference? It's frightening. Ulquiorra, a hollow made more human to achieve his power for the sake of fulfilling another tyrant's goals, and Ichigo, a human who's thrown himself into hollification beyond a point familiar to him, in a world he's shown genuine terror in adapting to, all for the sake of saving the person he cares for most. Oddly enough, the most human decision made is by Ichigo to distance himself from his humanity in this instance, with that very lack of humanity evident for all to see.
Yeah, that was a bit mad. That was
at this moment,
like, oh god.
To repeat, protect her to himself, that the pin drops for Orihime as she realizes that she's the one responsible for what's transpired. I think this scene, while emblematic of Orihime's naivety with regards to her decision to leave alone in the first place, it also highlights the stark similarities between herself and Ichigo, two sides of the same coin in many respects. In the same way Ichigo would want to go on his own to shoulder all of this responsibility in what would no doubt turn out to be a suicide mission, Orihime has done the very same, with both of them being driven by effectively each other to push themselves into becoming better and more helpful people. capable of carrying the weight of more and more responsibility. They, in a way together, are great for each other. However, as we're witnessing, extreme situations with extreme actors like this lead to extreme outcomes, with Ichigo having chosen, for the immediate safety of Orihime, to lose what reason he has left in the name of protecting her. Okay, so we're at the end of the fight, and honestly, this is my only issue with the scene. This strange desire Ichigo has to have a fair fight with Ulquiorra seems to come out of nowhere.
Yeah,
The idea that he's doing it for the sport of it, this sense of duty, that he doesn't want to win, quote, this way, is a bizarre proposition to me. He's there specifically to save those he loves from danger. Now, he did express earlier that he believed Ulquiorra was becoming more human, which would hint to something worthy of preserving. That's the approach Orihime is taking, and I understand that. As I said, he's been a very unique type of Arrancar to contend with in this arc, but Ichigo's reasoning that he himself verbalizes and outlines feels like a total cop-out, like something out of character, and one that didn't need to be there. He could have just agreed with Orihime. He even pointed out earlier that he wasn't fighting because he thinks he can win.
Because he's fighting because he has to win, yeah.
Needs to,
This kind of like changes that a little bit, doesn't it?
But it should be obvious that he doesn't need to fight now, and so that should have been reason enough not to fight Ulquiorra once he regained his senses. Not this chopping off of his own limbs to create a fair fight. That is utterly idiotic, and not to mention risks putting the very people he came there to save in danger. It runs entirely counterintuitive to his underlying motivations. In other words, I think it would have been better if Ichigo came back to life totally dead to the world from this transformation, zapped of energy. I did, however, love the fear that descended across his face once he realizes that he had done what he did in the Berserker form.
Yeah. This was mad.
Soul Society versus the Arrancars. Okay, so for reasons that should be very obvious at this point, I'm not the biggest fan of this section in Karakura Town either. Though I will say that it is far more enjoyable than the prelim matches we got towards the beginning with Shuhei and Izuru, or whatever his name is. This is how most
Whoever
of
that guy is.
characters we're already familiar with fighting, and we understand that they represent a certain ceiling or ability. The back and forths that take place and the implementation of strategy is refreshing, particularly compared to the standard 1v1 affair that colored the prior section over and over and over. This time it's a 2v1 with special conditions that make for a very competitive cat and mouse contest, concealing how the fight itself progresses with the variables that are compromised and known to us. Ukitake and Kyoraku versus the combination of two Arrancars, Lilinette and the other one. She's the gun and can fire Cereblast, so that's different.
These
dynamics,
Stark,
these
isn't it?
2v1 scenarios are exactly what I'm
Stark.
looking for to change up at least the visual representation of these repetitive fights. As a monstrous symbol of Aizen's growing impatience, this hulking monster marches forward into this realm greater in scope and size than anything we've yet seen. Moments pass and Ukitake is pierced through his abdomen. Kyoraku is shot from point-blank range. Toshira's opponent escapes from her icy prison, and that aging death Arrancar emerges.
There we go.
All of the supposed progress we made in the last dozen or so chapters has been essentially
I'm doing well, remember the names here, let's go.
And in the wake of that
Then it's Halle Bell, isn't it?
stands
The
Aizen, Tose,
female one.
and Gin. They have arrived, but they are not the only ones.
Oh my god, let's go.
I'm not gonna lie, seeing these guys, I was genuinely excited.
Yeah.
However, unfortunately, despite being armed with far more knowledge surrounding Hiyori and Shinji's respective histories with Aizen, we once again find ourselves in a sea of fights that offer little beyond helping acquaint us with certain characters half-heartedly before defeating them. I mean, I guess for
some
these
really cool moments.
characters, I think that vacuous exposition is better than nothing in terms of building the world up for later, but I still think that this arc doesn't do this nearly enough in situations that have consequences for the story being told. I prefer a snappy pace to a story over a world populated with 5 to 10 extra characters that don't offer much of anything. However, that is my preference, and it's not going to be everyone's preference, so I will acknowledge that. And while this section was less annoying than that first part with that guy whose name I'm convinced I've never heard before, it managed to irritate me by dangling something genuinely interesting with potential for story progression, like Shinji versus Aizen, but then it'll cut for ages away to the other fights that I expressed earlier significantly mattered far less to the story, before suddenly switching back to that interesting fight only to reveal that Shinji isn't squaring off against Aizen anymore, but instead Gin. Which, again, still would be better and more interesting than everything else we're being forced to look at here. Holy fuck! Finally, some tension. Shinji's now in a situation where he desperately wants Ichigo to get back with this crew to heal his comrade.
Oh my god, I didn't know that she'd get sliced in half in the manga, Jesus.
Interestingly, Ruki remarks that Ichigo seems different, that his eyes have changed, and that's not the only thing that's different. It's the mask he has on too. Ichigo lands a big attack, but it only really nicks him. Following this, he's unable to put the mask on again. I suspected at the time because he lacked conviction.
Yeah, he's scared to hurt his friends again.
What he has become. Maybe because he has reservations now. Whatever the case, this won't be the last time someone in the story remarks on the change in Ichigo's eyes. And when it happens again, I'll be sure to draw attention to it because it is valuable to the story. Anyway, Byakuya and Kenpachi turn up and make the save. Whoa! En route, we're told that Ichigo is the only one that can stop Aizen, and this is partially due to his not having seen Aizen's Shikai. If he does see it, essentially, he will lose. Again, I love this setup because it offers a nice bit of tension, a nice stipulation, and gives Ichigo a unique purpose that others can't have by virtue of their station. Meanwhile, Tozen becoming a hollow mask wearer is interesting. Shuhei stabs him in the head after he is resurrected, and oddly enough, becomes blinded by his own newfound ability to see. A nice little piece of irony there. But enough of that. Time for the plot! Ichigo arrives.
Let's go.
This is the plot. It was at this point in the story that something remarkable happened. All of the pacing issues I once complained about totally vanished, and the story was utterly compelling. I was glued to the pages of this manga suddenly, and the contrast between that feeling of disinterest moments prior to sudden enthusiasm to read forced me to take a step back and think, why? Like, why? How is it that right now I am feeling so engaged as a reader when moments prior I wasn't? And honestly, this is my theory. Now, this isn't a hard rule, but I find it to be a very useful way of looking at the story in order to diagnose certain issues. In storytelling, typically you can have things called the 3 central questions that, once answered, your story is resolved.
Okay.
1 professional question, 1 personal question, and 1 private question. Now, for the sake of examples, let's take Star Wars. The professional question in that
wow, I nearly freaked out there.
destroyed the Death Star. The personal question was, will he save Princess Leia?
Okay.
The private question was, will he be a Jedi like his father? And when you look at that first Star Wars film through that lens, you can clearly see that once all of those questions have been satisfied, the story itself wraps up and ends. However, keeping those questions in mind is paramount to the pacing of your story too. For if you aren't dealing with one of those questions at any given time to some degree, then it can run the risk of feeling like you're not progressing through the story. Which, for parts of it, is totally fine, but when you deal with large swaths of time like the Arrancar arc does, it starts becoming more of an issue. So, what are the central questions surrounding the Arrancar arc? Well, from what I can see, this is where the issue is, and oddly enough, it stems from an area Kubo is very comfortable and confident with in writing. It's Ichigo. The professional question of this arc is, will Ichigo be able to
beat Aizen, yeah, we're straight away just like,
will he be able to save or heal?
Okay.
And the private question of this arc is, will he be able to resolve his own internal conflicts? And if these are the central questions, what's the issue? Well, the issue I can see is that despite having a massive and still growing cast of characters, the plot's central questions tend to circle around 1, or if you want to push it, 2 characters, Ichigo and maybe Aizen. And I think a massive part of what makes this an issue is that Ichigo's questions are separated in 2 distinct locations, divorced from each other in important ways. In Star Wars, to ensure that the climax is satisfyingly climactic, all 3 of the film's central questions are answered at once. The ultimate goal is to destroy the Death Star, which is pointed at a planet that Princess Leia is on. But in order to destroy the Death Star, he needs to use the Force. The film creates a set of unique circumstances where each of those questions can only be answered when the others are satisfied. And this created what I'm sure few people can argue one of the most pivotal moments in cinematic history, influencing countless other projects to come. And this isn't just true for film. Let's go back to that example I used earlier in the Saiyan saga of Dragon Ball Z. The professional question was, will the forces of Earth protect their planet? The personal question was, will Gohan be able to rise to the occasion?
Okay.
The private question was, is Goku stronger than Vegeta? Can he rise to that challenge? And what I think makes this section of Dragon Ball work is that we are given two equally compelling plot lines to follow in the two different settings the plot is split between. In Otherworld, we're following the journey Goku's on to gain the power necessary to make a difference, and on Earth, we're following the story of Gohan's maturity and development. This keeps us engaged both within these two settings, and you can pinpoint the high points of this arc by keeping an eye on which questions are teased with being answered. Nappa demolishing the Earth's forces, killing Piccolo, and about to stomp on Gohan is one boot stomp away from answering two of the potentially three questions with a definitive no, only for Goku to arrive and undercut that very tension, setting up the third question. Goku and Vegeta's beam struggle shows Goku defending the Earth from an attack that would certainly end it while also trying to answer the question, is Goku stronger than Vegeta?
Is he gonna win? Yeah.
The point I'm trying to make here is, throughout the climax of this arc, in their battle with Vegeta and Nappa, all of these questions are flirted with being answered right up until the end, with the conclusion concluding that yes, they could protect the planet. Yes, Gohan could rise to the occasion, and technically, yes, Goku was stronger than Vegeta momentarily, but once transformed, he had all but lost, had it not been for Gohan. Bleach, on the other hand, while doing what Dragon Ball did in splitting the locations the plot takes place between Fake Karakura Town and the Hueco Mundo area, the central questions of the arc can only really be answered in Hueco Mundo, where Ichigo is. And Aizen could in theory help this situation, but he's hardly involved at all until the latter half of the climax.
That's true.
Furthermore, another issue I noticed comes in the form of one of the questions being answered long before and entirely divorced from the finish, which sort of makes Orihime's contribution to the arc feel a lot less significant than I otherwise anticipated it to be. Can he rescue Orihime? The answer is yes. And following that, Ichigo rushes off to fake Karakura Town.
To fight
This is why the battle with Aizen and his internal struggle with himself during their first encounter is so interesting. Because that moment, it's flirting with answering two of the three
questions. Right, okay, I like that. That's cool. Wow.
Everyone is teaming up against Aizen, and it's actually kind of fun to watch. Specifically when Shinji's ability actually starts disorienting Aizen.
Never mind.
I didn't see that coming. It's a great swerve, and it really makes me wish we had more of this in the story. Or at least if the story was less long, it would have been more impactful because it would have been closer to other great moments. After all of this, Yamamoto steps in to fight Aizen, grabs him while he stabs him, and while I can appreciate some are interested in this matchup, I can't say that I'm massively interested. We've all but been told explicitly that Ichigo is the only one that can defeat Aizen, and I'm aware that story isn't going to conclude or be contributed to by Yamamoto in a meaningful way. Or at least I'm fairly certain of that, I can't be sure. And so I'm just waiting for Ichigo to get involved because, as I mentioned, the only two aspects of this story yet to be resolved involve Ichigo. And that is the issue. Where the Saiyan saga split up its questions from the beginning between two different characters, Gohan and Goku, across two different areas, Ichigo seems to be shouldered with everything, ironically enough, seeing as that's sort of his mission to overcome that idea. And while that can work for a regular-length film like Star Wars, when it comes to a 247-chapter-long epic like this, for the focus to be all on one character primarily, that can create problems. With that said, the battle Yam has with Aizen is fittingly epic in scope and scale, with the commander himself reminding us who he really is and how dutiful he really can be. Following this, Ichigo lands a magnificent attack, but Aizen reveals that Hogyoku is protecting its master, him, healing him completely in an instant. And it's here Aizen reveals that all the growth Ichigo has undergone has occurred within the palm of his hand.
Yeah, Aizen planned everything.
Chapter 397 is a terrific move, one that makes Aizen the perfect villain for Ichigo Kurosaki to face off against. Standing before Ichigo, Aizen unravels what appears to be a complicated but carefully curated path for Ichigo to follow throughout his life. One that assured his own personal development as he grew from the countless battles Aizen placed before him, all in an effort to test him, treating him like a test subject, oddly enough. Everything from the moment this manga began seemingly all occurred due to the control of Aizen, his influence and his agency. And that's the key word here, agency. The Arrancar arc, and really this entire story, has been about Ichigo and the struggle he's undergone to enact his will both unto himself and the world around him. He's consistently coming up against foes that seem impossible to defeat, and whether it be political decisions, interpersonal decisions, or physical collisions, there has consistently been forces at work in this story preventing Ichigo from achieving his goal, preventing him from enacting his own agency. But the story of this manga has been that of struggle against adversity, with struggle winning out in the end. Struggle in the face of insurmountable odds to save your loved ones, to protect your friends, and to, in this arc, accept and value their help. The very idea that something like this is being propositioned by Aizen is the ultimate weapon against Ichigo's mind and character. It's an utter slap in the face, proposing that he's never actually achieved anything, that he's never really made any choices, but has in fact run on a hamster wheel set up by Aizen.
Yeah, it's madness, isn't it?
All of this time he thought he was winning and making a difference in the world has been Aizen's schemes going according to plan. It's a devastating bomb to drop on Ichigo, specifically as his entire character is built around this very idea of reacting to challenges and overcoming them with his own will. It's one of the central questions, and one of the reasons why this works so well for me is that it takes two of those questions and makes them feel impossible to overcome. And right now he's being told he never had any agency to begin with, and it's just a chilling thought.
Yes.
Aizen said, "Didn't you ever think it was strange? Did you chalk it all up to fate? Did you think that this attack was a coincidence as well? Did you think your victories were the result of your own efforts?" And just as this meeting of the minds comes to its climax, Aizen says that he's had his eyes on Ichigo since he was born, because he's both human and...
Let's go.
This is by far the strongest aspect, and maybe even the strongest section of the story. And can we guess why? Because it's contending with most of the central questions in this arc. Orihime is saved, so that's checked off, but can he defeat Aizen? Well,
can he overcome his struggles?
This certainly seems to be insurmountable the more Aizen speaks and reveals to Ichigo. And that's to ignore the mental state he's under. It's the perfect interaction, and I wish we got more of this in the arc, because it's so good!
Yeah, it's great.
Also, kind of a cool touch here, Ginsword Bankai is perfect for his character design. I mean, it should come as no surprise to anyone that his appearance is based on a snake. I mean, I didn't mention it because, look at him. He's got a weird-ass eyes. All he needs is a forked tongue to complete the transformation.
Yeah.
But what's more is his sword extends quickly to great lengths in order to attack, and as we find out later, leaves with it a little bit of poison. Just like a snake striking, like a coiled spring. I don't know, I thought that was a really cute touch, but anyway, back to the story. Urahara and Mr. Kurosaki set him up once he's back and fully formed for Yoruichi to attack. But
this was sick.
And honestly, it's pretty cool getting to see the older generation take
teaming up and
I think it's made all the better knowing that Ichigo is present to watch all of this unfold. And during his short-lived battle with Gin, Ichigo is showing signs of uncertainty and a lack of conviction, emphasized by Gin in chapter 405, page 4, where he says, "Were you always this way?
Damn.
Your mask is brittle too. Is this the extent of your holification? You were scarier back then." Referring to when he first clashed swords with him during the Soul Society. Right now, Ichigo needs to have a clear goal to fight for. Back then, he was striving to reach Rukia. After that, he was fighting to rescue Orihime. But now he's fighting out of a sense of duty? When in reality, that's never really been enough for him.
No, there has to be more of a reason for him to fight, isn't there?
Something to fight for to get the best work out of himself. Rukia had to twist his arm back in the day in the beginning, and he himself said that he wouldn't let someone die in front of him when he was first speaking on the topic in the first arc. So basically, he would need his friends or his father or someone he cares about to protect right now, and he doesn't really have that in an obvious way. With the mask being brittle, almost acting as a metaphor for the tenuous and half-hearted purpose he possesses to fight with and for in this moment. And nowhere is this tackled better than with his most recent venture into his mind to confront himself. In chapter 406, page 3, Ichigo's father says to him, "The only person who can perceive Aizen's power is someone who's in the same state he is." It's a weird thing to say in the moment, and a fact I don't know how he could possibly verify, but it matters to the story because Ichigo can sense his energy. Continuing on, Ichigo's dad puts him into this state to confront Zangetsu for what might be his very last time, while Aizen arrives at the real Karakura town as his friends start to run around the now quiet home they grew up in. And once inside his own mind, the depiction of Zangetsu is quite different, and his words are somewhat cryptic. He says, "I don't care what happens to things you want to protect." And his reasoning for feeling this way? The rain that once poured down in this world may have stopped, but now it's being sunk to the bottom of the ocean. All because you lost hope and stopped moving.
Damn.
There are a number of strange metaphorical interactions that take place in this realm, none of which are more striking than Ichigo's other side revealing himself, now wearing the mask of the monster he used to protect and save Morihime. And while this is happening, Aizen is chatting with Tatsuki, citing that he knows that Ichigo will show up with some new power-up, once again adding fuel to the tension surrounding Ichigo's ultimate arrival. Oddly enough, however, something I didn't anticipate was how hyped I would be for both Kananji and Matsumoto showing up to make the save on a downed Tatsuki. Following this, Matsumoto engages with Gin, and during this interaction, he describes himself in a rather curious way. There's always been the similarity between Gin and the snake, but the fact that he himself refers to himself as such way back when they first met was kind of interesting. He says, "I'm a snake, my skin is cold, I have no heart. I slither looking for prey with the time of my tongue. I swallow the people I care about whole." The last line suggests that he does care about people. Maybe the real Gin hasn't ever really been known to us, but it exists still deep down somewhere. Perhaps he did kill
Let's go.
Matsumoto.
Let's go. This moment was so fucking sick. Yep. But he spent this whole time just trying to get closer to Aizen.
Holy fuck!
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that was the shortest lived theory I've ever made. No joke, I swear to God, I made that prediction before reading that very part of the chapter. So, I technically predicted the moment Gin turns on Aizen, but albeit in the same chapter it's revealed, but whatever. It's still a cool scene, but Aizen is still in full control.
Yeah. It's sad. Let's go.
The design Ichigo shows up to fight against Aizen with is
Why do I hear
sort
boss
of
music?
like a combination of the beings that stood in opposition to him in his mind moments before. His hair is much more floppy than spiked, and not to mention longer. His robe is in tatters, with a black chain coiled around his arm to his fist wrapped
So
in
sick.
black. They even remark that he's taller, so maybe it's forced him to age up a bit. And as I mentioned, with eyes being the running thing to comment on with his appearance in this arc, he mentioned that earlier he looked weak, referring to Ichigo when he last saw him prior to his short stint in training. Whereas now, he looked into Ichigo's eyes and says, "Your eyes are stronger. Good. Now I can die and leave this in your hands."
Damn.
With that, Ichigo decides he wants to take this fight elsewhere.
And then just takes him.
I just thought that was really funny. It's really good. The calm and composed Aizen slowly over the course of this beatdown becomes tattered and disfigured by his own inability to stop. He truly became a horrifying monster. And honestly, there isn't much to this battle I can comment on apart from the incredible artwork, but I suppose that's a belabored point at this stage. But the truth is, now that Ichigo has answered the second question already, now all that he has to do is defeat Aizen, and naturally that does come. Now, to be clear,
Well,
I did enjoy
no.
this fight. I'd even
No,
read it
he
again,
doesn't
maybe,
beat
but
Aizen.
I think if all of those central questions, instead of being answered at gradual points across a number of scenes in the last 50 chapters, would have better served the story had they been answered all at once or somewhere close together to create some sort of crescendo for the story. But alas, it didn't quite do that. Alternatively, it does deliver a very satisfying beatdown of this weird
Yeah, it is cool.
Aizen monster, culminating on a moment where if Ichigo uses this technique, he'll lose all of his Soul Reaper powers. It looks awesome, and there's a really nice message about giving everything you have ever worked and struggled for in the name of doing the right thing, and I think that's a really cool thing for this arc to do. It weakens Aizen tremendously, but he is still standing. However, Urahara steps in to weaken him
Yep.
further. Eventually, Aizen reaches a point where the whole Goku doesn't recognize him as its master, and then reverts back to his normal state, unable to overpower those superior to him, thus ending the threat he poses for now. I say for now because he goes to something like the Soul Society jail or something for a comically long amount of time, and if they had no further use for him in this story, I would have thought, or I thought it would make sense for him to be killed off or at least previously.
They can't kill him though, can they?
So I'm going to assume he's coming back at some point, but I mean, I could be wrong. Stranger things have happened than me being wrong, so yeah, I could very well be wrong. In the aftermath of the battle, however, there's a really nice piece of subtle writing I very much appreciated. Following his transformative meeting with Tensei Zangetsu, he reflects on his battle with Aizen, asking Urahara in chapter 422, page 14 and 15, did the Hogyoku really reject Aizen? My dad told me Hogyoku could read the hearts of those around it and make their wishes come true. If so, maybe Aizen wanted to lose his powers. I was finally able to feel his sword in the battle after I gained enough power to fight him as an equal. I only felt loneliness from it. If he was born with exceptional powers, maybe he was looking for someone who could see things from his perspective. This has very similar wording to how his counterpart Zangetsu spoke in those interactions in his mind. And using that as the basis for this conversation, it's clear to see that interaction, that transformative experience, has not only transformed him physically, but mentally too. And off the back of that, to close out this arc, there's a really touching end to the story with Ichigo awakening from a month-long recovery slumber. When he wakes, Rukia explains that his powers are gone and that in moments he won't be able to see her anymore. And there's something really sad about that, and honestly, would have made for a really nice ending to this series, if not a little melancholic. Just as suddenly as she entered his life, she leaves, taking with her all the spectacular and terrifying things that brought with it, all the adventure, all the understanding, and all the visions. My suspicion at this point now, having completed this arc, is that much the same way Rukia lost her powers but slowly regained them through exposure to a certain environment, so too might Ichigo. I mean, I can't exactly imagine he'll be without his powers for the rest of this series. I mean, looking at the amount of chapters left, he must have powers. I mean, it doesn't make sense for him not to. All in all, despite my pointed criticisms, I did very much enjoy this story being told during this section. The first 40% of the story is nearly perfect, and while I found far too much bloat in this final 60%, I still felt as though it managed to deliver a strong final battle with Aizen and some terrific character work with Ichigo. However, similarly to Soul Society, I thought this lacked any substantial use of its secondary characters. Rukia played a tiny role, and even Orihime...
True, yeah. The people that we had like a lot of invested time in at the start really are overshadowed by a lot of people we don't really care about as much.
Certainly more than the little they ended up offering. So I did find that disappointing too. I mean, with what felt like hundreds of fights in this arc, Chad had like, what, 2 fights?
Maybe.
With that said, this concludes my review of the Arrancar arc. If I could describe the Arrancar arc in one sentence, it would be a compelling personal story surrounding 2 or 3 characters that ultimately spends too much time not dealing with these characters until the very end. With really only one getting a substantial ending, another sort of getting an ending, though I would have liked to see her get a bit more, and the third, who was also there, I guess? Oh yeah, and Chad was there too, kind of. Next week's video will deal with the Fullbring arc, and that's significantly shorter, so hopefully that'll work in this arc's favor. Until then, I've been Totally Not Mark, and thank you so much for watching.
Really intrigued to see what he thinks of the Fullbring arc, man. Because like I said, I'm anime only until the 1,000 Year Blood War arc, because that's only just started now. I genuinely thought the Fullbring arc was filler. I thought the Fullbring arc was filler, and that's why I forget about it sometimes, but it is not. And it'd be really interesting to see what he thinks of that, and it'd be interesting to see if he's actually going to carry on with the 1,000 Year Blood War arc manga. But I feel like for editing's sake, he probably isn't, because there's not going to be much anime clips to be able to throw in at the moment. We're only like, what, 2 episodes into the Bleach anime, which I've still not watched. Oh, I've heard it's so good though. But yeah, Arrancar arc, decent. I do get what he's saying about the amount of fights not actually affecting the story. It is a bit annoying, but I remember watching it and just thinking, oh my god, these fights are cool. And I think, you know, if you want to watch something and just see people fight, then the Arrancar arc's full of it. Cool, awesome. But if you're fully invested in just the story, then yeah, you are going to be a bit like, come on, where are we going? But yeah, look forward to seeing the Fullbring arc review. And until then, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, links in the description to the Patreon page. $1 more or less helps support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys very much for that. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click a like, subscribe if you haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know that you're watching some future videos. And I'll see you guys next time.